The world watched in disbelief as shocking new footage surfaced showing Diddy and Nicolas Cage in what appears to be an underground deal in Istanbul. What are a music mogul and a Hollywood legend doing behind closed doors on foreign soil? Rumors swirl, from stolen artifacts to encrypted government files. This might be the strangest celebrity pairing ever caught in an international scandal, and we're diving into it all. It started with a grainy, 37-second clip posted anonymously to X, formerly Twitter. The caption read only, "You were never supposed to see this." Within minutes, it was retweeted by major influencer accounts, pulled into Telegram conspiracy channels, and splashed across subreddits with names like Our Hollywood Leaks and Our Celebrity Truth. The setting? The marbled lobby of the Sran Palace Kempinski in Istanbul, an opulent hotel that had hosted monarchs, heads of state, and now, allegedly, two of the most unlikely partners in modern entertainment, Sean Diddy Combs and Nicolas Cage. The footage wasn't high quality, but it didn't need to be. The timestamp in the top right corner read 2:43, the 2nd of June, 2025. The first figure entered through the eastern entrance, wearing a black hoodie, sunglasses, and a face mask. Standard fare for celebrities trying to avoid recognition, but unmistakably Diddy once zoomed in. Several frames showed a familiar gold ring and chain, pieces fans had catalogued for years. He walked with two others, tall, suited, and stiff, clearly private security. They moved past the concierge desk and into the private elevator. The next portion, 10 minutes into the clip, revealed a second man entering from the opposite side, lankier, with unkempt hair, dressed like a travel-weary academic. He hesitated before the sliding glass doors, looked over his shoulder, and removed his sunglasses. There was no mistaking him. Nicolas Cage. The internet swelled with disbelief. What was Cage, a man known as much for his chaotic film choices as his eccentric private life, doing entering the same hotel in the dead of night, just hours after Diddy? What truly ignited the firestorm, though, happened near the end of the video. A woman, unidentified and dressed in a slate-gray trench coat, approached Cage near the elevator bay. Her face was never visible, always turned away from the camera. From beneath her coat, she pulled a sleek black briefcase, passed it to Cage in one swift, practiced motion, and turned away without a word. Cage glanced down at the briefcase, then stepped into the elevator. Just as the doors began to close, a single frame captured the reflection of Diddy in the mirrored wall inside. They were in the same lift. Red circles appeared across screenshots online. "They left together," wrote a popular TikTok creator, splicing together slow-motion stills with ominous background music. By morning, the footage had been mirrored, downloaded, analyzed, and dissected across 100 platforms. One account claimed the briefcase was military-grade, the kind used for biometric locks. Another posted side-by-side comparisons of Cage's expression in the clip with his look in National Treasure, as if fictional character behavior would somehow verify real-life scandal. Then the takedowns began. First, it vanished from Twitter. Then Instagram Reels started returning content unavailable errors. Reddit threads went private. A user named @CleoVisions, who had originally uploaded the uncut version, posted one final message before deleting her account. "I was warned. Don't trust the surface." This censorship only deepened suspicion. If it were fake, why take it down? And if it were real, what were they hiding? Major media outlets treaded carefully. TMZ referred to it as alleged footage. Variety called it unverified but compelling. CNN aired a brief segment with security footage experts, one of whom remarked, "There are no clear digital markers of manipulation here. If it's a fake, it's a damn good one." Meanwhile, Redditus mapped the floor plan of the hotel, overlaying the footage to determine angles and possible blind spots. One user even claimed to have stayed in the suite above the private elevator and uploaded a muffled audio clip from the same night, indistinct voices, the sound of a latch, and then a faint, metallic click, possibly the briefcase being opened. As the story gained traction, both men's camps scrambled to respond, or not respond. Diddy's PR team issued a single-line email to journalists. Mr. Combs was not in Istanbul on June 2nd. No elaboration, no alternate explanation, and critically, no denial of the footage's authenticity. Cage's team, meanwhile, tried a different approach. A spokesperson told Entertainment Weekly, Nicolas was in Europe researching a role that required extensive travel. "We do not comment on private business meetings." It was a curious choice of words, business meetings, when most assumed any footage of Cage in Istanbul would be connected to film, not commerce. The Turkish government, perhaps predictably, said little. A mid-level official within the Ministry of Culture told the Hurriyet Daily News that surveillance leaks from state-approved locations are being reviewed. But even that vague acknowledgement sent forums into a frenzy. State-approved, users asked. Are these two under surveillance? A handful of security analysts quietly confirmed that foreign VIPs visiting Turkey often find themselves observed, sometimes overtly, sometimes not. One former NATO advisor told a journalist under condition of anonymity, "There are layers in Istanbul. Not just national security but cultural protection. If someone's dealing in stolen antiquities, you better believe eyes are on them." That last comment touched off a wave of new speculation. Was the briefcase connected to stolen artifacts? A stolen manuscript? Ancient coins? A black market relic? Cage's well-documented interest in collecting rare, sometimes legally dubious items resurfaced in headlines, from his $276,000 dinosaur skull, which he later had to return, to his bidding war over a stolen copy of the first Superman comic. And Diddy? While less connected to artifacts, whispers of offshore dealings and opaque investments had followed him for years. The idea that these two men, both rich, powerful, and operating outside Hollywood norms, might be involved in something shadowy, even illegal, had captivated the public imagination. As the sun rose across Istanbul the next morning, hotel staff were reportedly tight-lipped. A junior concierge was recorded telling reporters, "We don't discuss guest activity." When shown a still from the footage, he simply smiled and walked away. Meanwhile, online voices grew louder. "This is going deeper than we know," posted a TikTok creator named @conspiracycore. "This isn't just a midnight meeting, it's a piece of something huge. And the next part's coming soon." Whether it was the truth, paranoia, or a perfect storm of both, one thing was certain: the world had questions, and nobody was giving answers. Within 24 hours of the Istanbul footage leak, a new digital ghost emerged from the shadows, an anonymous whistleblower operating under the name AltaZero. Their arrival was subtle at first, a single post on the encrypted forum ZeroSplice, long known for housing political dissidents, disgruntled intelligence officers, and conspiracy archivists. The post's headline simply read, "This wasn't an accident. Diddy, Cage, briefcase. Cultural crimes go deeper than you think." Attached was a link to a now-vanished server containing multiple files. Most were indecipherable, strings of code, possibly encrypted metadata, but one document stood out. It bore a timestamp close to that of the leaked footage and appeared to be an internal memo from a Turkish security agency. The line that caught the internet's eye read, "Surveillance review. Foreign nationals involved in potential trafficking of protected cultural artifacts. Codename, Curvin Protocol." Curvin Protocol. Within minutes, the term trended across platforms. It was mysterious, official-sounding, and, importantly, completely undocumented online. No prior mention in leaks, cables, or reports. Commentators scrambled to define it. Some claimed it referred to a covert initiative protecting artifacts smuggled out of conflict zones. Others suggested it was tied to an intergovernmental task force focused on high-profile celebrity smuggling rings. Speculation turned to obsession. Who was AltaZero? And why were they risking so much to expose this now global mystery? The account offered no biography, no location. But what it did offer were cryptic updates, short, urgent transmissions in the style of puzzles. One post read, "When relics become currency, men become messengers." Istanbul was not the beginning. Look to the Red Quarter. Reddit sleuths and YouTube theorists began decoding the phrase. Some claimed Red Quarter referred to a now-demolished black market hub in Marrakesh. Others linked it to a gallery in Vienna that was reportedly raided in 2023 for housing stolen Byzantine mosaics. One theory even tied it to a secret wing of the Vatican Museum closed since 2018. But amid the frenzy, a larger question emerged. Why leak this at all? A potential motive surfaced through Turkish media. An investigative journalist from Seba, using unnamed sources in Ankara, reported that someone within the Ministry of Culture had grown disillusioned. They believed their own agency was suppressing evidence of an international crime ring laundering ancient artifacts through entertainment figures, people who could move freely, fly private, and draw little suspicion. "It's not just about Diddy or Cage," the source reportedly said. "It's about a network. They use fame to shield transactions, to launder stories, to move objects nobody should own." This explanation was met with both intrigue and outrage. Mainstream news anchors danced cautiously around the claims, while independent outlets ran with it. A wave of podcasts, Substacks, and Twitter Spaces popped up under titles like the Cultural Underground, Stolen Gold, and Briefcase Theory. As digital fire raged, officials tried to pour cold water. The Turkish Interior Ministry released a short, sterile press briefing. "We are aware of unauthorized video material circulating online. Investigations are underway." The Republic of Turkey condemns the illegal distribution of surveillance data and urges the public not to speculate on unverified content. But it was too late for caution. Online investigators were already poring over Diddy and Cage's travel records, comparing timestamps, scanning photos, and geotagging old social media posts. A freelance aviation tracker uploaded logs from Ataturk Airport showing a private jet landing 5 hours before the footage was timestamped, registered to a shell corporation with known links to Diddy's business empire. Diddy's spokesperson, when reached for comment, doubled down. "Our client was not in Istanbul on the date in question. Any suggestion otherwise is defamatory." But new fuel was added to the fire when a Turkish Reddit user posted a blurry still from their personal Instagram story, an image of what appeared to be Diddy walking through the Spice Bazaar in Karakoy, flanked by 2 bodyguards. The story had been posted on June 2nd and deleted hours later. Nicolas Cage's publicist issued a vague denial. Mr. Cage is deeply committed to his craft and often travels for immersive research. He was in Europe developing a character for an upcoming historical thriller. No involvement in any alleged transaction occurred. The phrase "alleged transaction" became a meme. Clips of Cage's erratic film dialogue were mashed with the leaked footage and underscored with captions like "no involvement detected." Still, behind the chaos, some corners of the internet began noticing patterns. Every encrypted drop from AltaZero hinted at a larger framework: illicit artifact networks, state complicity, and celebrity pawns. A researcher at the University of Amsterdam's Center for Illicit Antiquities published a blog post theorizing that Cage's known interest in historical relics made him a perfect intermediary for smugglers. Meanwhile, Diddy's global influence and history of untraceable investments could position him as a financier of cultural laundering. More disturbingly, a second leak from AltaZero contained partial transcripts of what seemed to be intercepted emails between a DC and a NK. The only lines that were legible read: "Ensure we use a low-traffic port, nothing through customs. The Istanbul contact has already arranged the extraction. Briefcase must remain closed." Analysts debated the legitimacy of the messages. Were they real? Fabricated? AI-generated? But even AI detection tools yielded inconclusive results, only fanning the flames further. By the end of the week, AltaZero had become an internet cult figure. Conspiracy documentaries were in production. TikTok creators dressed in trench coats mimicked the woman from the footage. Merch was sold, t-shirts emblazoned with the words "Istanbul Protocol, open the briefcase." And then, silence. No new messages. No more leaks. AltaZero's account went dark. People speculated they had been caught, silenced, or worse. Theories ranged from forced disappearance to voluntary exile. Some claimed to have seen posts from AltaZero on the dark web, promising another drop soon. Others said it was over, that they had served their purpose. But the damage was done. Cage and Diddy were now central characters in a cultural firestorm, tangled in whispers of crime rings, secret briefcases, and an Istanbul mystery no one could fully explain. And if the source was right, if this was just the beginning, then the world hadn't even begun to understand what they were looking at. Because as AltaZero's final message had warned, "You're focusing on who? Start asking why." It began as a whisper. The briefcase contained a relic. By the time the theory hit mainstream discussion, it had grown into a full-blown cultural obsession. The first major breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a YouTube historian named Dr. Alina Serrat, a former artifact registrar at the British Museum turned online educator. In a widely viewed breakdown titled "What Was in Cage's Briefcase?", Serrat paused the Istanbul footage at the exact frame where the object was exchanged. Using forensic scaling and motion analysis, she argued the briefcase's dimensions and rigidity matched a specific type of museum-grade transport case, one often used to carry ancient manuscripts, papyri, or fragile stone tablets. More importantly, she noticed something others hadn't. As Nicolas Cage lifts the case, his left hand instinctively presses a recessed button on the top edge. "That's not a normal lock," Serrat said. "It's a biometric authentication pad, likely coded to Cage's thumbprint. That kind of tech is used when moving priceless items that can't risk even seconds of exposure to air or light." Within 48 hours, Serret's video had 5.2 million views, and hashtags like #CageBriefcase and #DiddyRelic were dominating global trends.
Sleuths got to work.
A parallel narrative began to emerge, centering around a black market auction that had reportedly been cancelled in Dubai on June 3, just one day after the Istanbul encounter. According to a now-deleted post on an exclusive collectors forum, the auction had planned to showcase an object of high Islamic significance, circa 14th century, believed lost in the fall of Tripoli. Though no object name was listed, the description bore resemblance to the Baybar's Quran, a legendary manuscript believed destroyed during the Crusades. This set the internet ablaze. Was Cage trying to acquire the Baybar's Quran on the black market? And was Diddy funding the operation? Multiple theories bloomed simultaneously. Theory 1. The manuscript, the briefcase contained the missing Quran, smuggled from Syria through Turkey. Cage, long obsessed with historical artifacts, had paid for exclusive rights to transport and restore it for a film project. Theory 2. The black stone fragment. A more outlandish hypothesis suggested the object was a fragment of the black stone from the Kaaba in Mecca, removed during the 930s and long thought lost. This was fueled by Arabic writing barely visible on the side of the case when digitally enhanced. Theory 3. The medallion hoax. A less popular theory posited that the case contained not a relic, but a prop, a medallion made to look like an ancient artifact, intended to create an illusion of controversy for a viral marketing stunt. But the real spark that ignited the artifact theory into legitimacy came not from the internet, but from academia. An open letter signed by 4 professors of antiquities across Europe, including the University of Leiden and the Sorbonne, was published in the Art and Illicit Trade Review.
It read in part:
if the object exchanged in Istanbul is genuine, its transportation violates both the 1970 UNESCO Convention on the Illicit Trade of Cultural Property and multiple regional laws surrounding protected Islamic heritage. We urge international authorities to investigate the individuals involved and preserve the object for scholarly review. Suddenly, it wasn't just a meme.
It was a legal issue.
Interpol quietly added an unnamed item of high cultural value to its most wanted cultural property list, without specifying any connection to the Istanbul video. But investigative reporters confirmed through sources that this listing happened the same week Turkish authorities began questioning customs officers at Istanbul airport. Someone had moved something through diplomatic channels, and no one was admitting who. Meanwhile, the deeper history of Nicolas Cage's collecting habits began resurfacing in painful detail. In 2007, Cage had paid over $270,000 for a Mongolian dinosaur skull, only to later return it to the Mongolian government after learning it was stolen. Years before that, he outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a first-edition Superman comic, stolen, then miraculously recovered. Cage, it seemed, had a pattern.
Diddy's history was harder to track.
While not previously linked to artifact collecting, several Reddit researchers unearthed past business partnerships with individuals later named in cultural smuggling indictments, one in Malta, another in Lebanon. A 2018 financial report from a holding company based in Luxembourg mentioned cultural preservation assets, a vague line item that could include artwork, manuscripts, or historically significant goods. Then came the shocking revelation. A former Turkish museum registrar, speaking anonymously to Der Spiegel, claimed she had been approached in 2024 to authenticate a scroll fragment of unknown origin, said to be in the hands of a Western film star. She declined the job, citing its illegality, but confirmed the person she met was speaking American accented English and mentioned a private partner from the music industry. When asked if it was Cage and Diddy, she hesitated, then said, "I never said those names.
But I won't say it wasn't them."
The pieces continued falling into place. A frame-by-frame enhancement of the Istanbul video showed a thin chain around the mystery woman's wrist, later identified by amateur analysts as a bracelet commonly gifted to high-ranking curators of the Topkapi Palace Museum. If accurate, that would mean the woman handing off the briefcase wasn't a black market courier, but someone embedded in Istanbul's heritage scene.
Possibly a traitor. Possibly coerced.
Meanwhile, journalists tracked down the mystery woman's taxi drop-off point using time-stamped footage from a nearby ATM. A match was found. The car drove into a gated complex owned by a real estate shell company linked to a known Israeli intelligence front. By now, it was clear. This wasn't just about artifacts.
It was espionage.
Or worse, covert asset relocation under the guise of celebrity drama. As the theories escalated, so did the stakes. The Turkish Ministry of Tourism announced an internal review of all outgoing artifact transfers from the past year.
Museums began conducting emergency inventories.
A private art insurer in London reported 3 sudden cancellation requests, allegedly tied to unnamed American clients. All of this, born from a single briefcase, handed off in a lobby in the early hours of the morning. But no one, not Cage, not Diddy, not the woman, had spoken a word about what the case actually contained. And as silence grew louder, one truth became evident. Whatever was inside that case, it wasn't meant to be seen. And now, the world couldn't look away. While the world focused its attention on Nicolas Cage's eccentric history with artifacts, the question no one seemed ready to answer was this: why was Diddy there at all? Sean Combs, known publicly as Diddy, had spent decades cultivating an image of a music mogul turned entrepreneur. Lavish parties, tequila brands, and billion-dollar business moves were his trademarks, not historical artifacts. But as more eyes turned to his presence in Istanbul, investigators began piecing together a trail far more complex than anyone had expected.
It started with a photograph.
Posted to a now-deleted Russian gossip site in 2016, the image showed Diddy sitting at a yacht-side table in the port of Odessa. Seated around him were 3 men, one identified as a Ukrainian shipping magnate, another as a Serbian real estate mogul, and the third as Vasily Dubrovkin, a lesser-known but deeply connected arms broker who'd been sanctioned in 2018 for illegal transactions in North Africa. At the time, the image was dismissed as tabloid fodder. Diddy had been touring Europe, attending private performances, and the photo barely made Western media. But now, under the lens of the Istanbul incident, the context looked drastically different. What was Diddy doing with men involved in shipping, real estate laundering, and weapons procurement? An even more troubling connection came from the Project Nightwatch leaks, classified documents hacked from a defunct Swiss banking entity in 2022. In them, Diddy's name appeared in coded entries tied to consultation disbursements for multiple offshore foundations registered in Cyprus, Gibraltar, and Seychelles. One of the entities, Aurora Shield International, had also moved money for parties later indicted in UNESCO cultural heritage theft cases. The transfers were carefully concealed, split into smaller amounts, routed through shell companies, sometimes listed under aliases. But a pattern emerged: large inflows from media-based LLCs in California, followed by outflows to preservation trusts in the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean. Analysts speculated these were laundering fronts. The genius of it, one former financial crimes investigator told The Guardian, is that it looks like philanthropy. These trusts claim to protect ancient heritage, fund restorations, endow scholarships, but the money vanishes.
And now we find Diddy tied to it? He's not just a face in this.
He's a funder. Further digging uncovered that Diddy had made 3 private visits to Montenegro between 2020 and 2024. There was no press, no publicized business, and no music activity. But each trip coincided with major acquisitions by a real estate holding group tied to protected land zones and ex-monastic properties. On 2 occasions, the properties involved were under dispute by national heritage agencies. Both suddenly withdrew their claims, citing external mediation. That external mediation, according to leaked internal emails, had been pushed by a U.S. cultural preservation donor, a euphemism some believed referred to Diddy himself. Meanwhile, anonymous hackers operating under the handle Ghost Index dropped a document cache said to originate from a breached diplomatic courier's laptop. One file, a partially redacted internal memo from a European intelligence agency, linked Diddy to a list of non-governmental cultural influencers suspected of moving high-value items for undisclosed state clients.
The file read in part:
Combs maintains soft access to elite collectors through social diplomacy. Identified as an intermediary on multiple asset relocations, notably involving items of disputed origin from Iraq, Syria, and North Africa. Suddenly, Diddy wasn't just in the picture, he was possibly facilitating artifact transactions across borders. An even more damning revelation came from a retired U.S. diplomat who, on condition of anonymity, told ProPublica. There were always rumors that Combs had access, not just to political players, but to power structures beyond showbiz, offshore trusts, cultural ministries, private security details in unstable regions.
That's not music money.
That's legacy positioning. Legacy positioning, the act of embedding oneself within the cultural or political systems of influence that outlive career fame. If this were true, Diddy wasn't just building a media empire. He was infiltrating old-world networks and acquiring assets with generational leverage. Reddit exploded with theories, with one gaining particular traction: the cartographer hypothesis. According to the theory, Diddy was attempting to amass a portfolio of historical artifacts with ambiguous provenance, items that couldn't easily be claimed by modern governments but carried immense cultural weight.
The intent?
To someday open a private museum, untouchable by international law, where influence wasn't bought with oil or votes, but with preserved history. Supporting this theory were several trademarks quietly filed in Luxembourg under a company called Cobalt Vault Holdings, trademarks for a museum-like entity, including the Vault of the Ancients, Pan-Human Heritage Archive, Voices from Stone, a global memory project. All were filed by an attorney known for representing high-profile cultural collectors with questionable inventories.
So where did Cage fit into all this?
Analysts proposed he was the intermediary, less discreet, more eccentric, but capable of moving across borders with minimal scrutiny. A man obsessed with lost histories paired with a mogul obsessed with legacy? The briefcase might have been the culmination of a long-brewing alliance, Cage finding the relic, Diddy funding and securing it. Meanwhile, the woman in the footage, the one who passed the case, was now rumored to be a dual national with diplomatic protection, allegedly tied to the International Council for Artifact Restitution, a powerful but rarely mentioned lobby group that negotiates cultural repatriations in silence. If she was involved, it suggested the transaction had been sanctioned, or intended to appear sanctioned, by very powerful interests. It wasn't long before voices began calling for action. Cultural watchdog organizations demanded full transparency. A London MP introduced a parliamentary motion to investigate British-based cultural funding linked to American entertainers. Turkish officials reportedly raided a residence linked to a known artifact smuggler who had Diddy's name in a burner phone contact list.
Despite this, Combs remained silent.
No press conference.
No tweet. No legal threat. Just silence.
Cage, ever unpredictable, was spotted in Croatia days later, wearing sunglasses indoors, dodging questions about Istanbul, and reportedly asking for books on Ottoman calligraphy in a local bookstore. For a story birthed from a 37-second surveillance clip, the fallout had become generational. Diddy wasn't just a guest in someone else's scandal anymore. He was its architect, or, at the very least, its patron. And if the whispers were true, Istanbul was merely the first briefcase in a much larger vault. If Diddy was the financier, the enabler behind the operation, then Nicolas Cage was undeniably the face, and increasingly, the wild card. In the weeks before the Istanbul briefcase exchange, reports of Cage behaving erratically began trickling in from multiple European cities. What had previously seemed like isolated oddities now took on the shape of a breadcrumb trail. The first notable sighting occurred in Prague, where Cage had reportedly been staying at the Augustine Hotel, an exclusive luxury resort housed in a former 13th-century monastery. Hotel staff described him as quiet but intense, often seen pacing the gardens alone late at night, whispering to himself in a mixture of Latin and English. One employee claimed he overheard Cage saying, "The relic is the key to memory, not history, memory." Initially dismissed as typical method-acting behavior, the incident gained new significance when a Czech art dealer, who asked to remain anonymous, told Lido Noviny that Cage had approached him 2 nights before Istanbul, inquiring about a Byzantine medallion stolen from a monastery in 2003. The actor allegedly offered €200,000 in cash for any usable fragments that could be matched to the piece. The art dealer declined, citing legal risks. But Cage reportedly left him with a line that lingered in his memory. "Don't worry. I'm not here for acquisition. I'm here for redemption." Days later, Cage appeared in Bucharest. Locals photographed him near the Curtea Veche, a historic palace once occupied by Vlad the Impaler. He was seen wearing a heavy coat in sweltering heat, speaking to himself while holding what appeared to be an antique compass. Several witnesses claimed he stopped in front of a statue of Mircea the Elder and stood motionless for 5 minutes before suddenly turning to a nearby street vendor and saying, "He's not buried here.
That's the lie.
That's the seal." The vendor, bewildered, later recalled, "It was like he was performing an exorcism no one asked for." But it wasn't just the strange behavior.
It was the pattern.
A journalist from Romanian outlet Hot News uncovered hotel records showing Cage paid in cash, using an alias, Nathan Gates, the name of his character from the National Treasure films.
This detail blew up online. Was it an inside joke?
Or was Cage leaning so far into his identity as a treasure seeker that he'd blurred the line between character and self? Shortly after the Istanbul incident, France 24 aired a segment connecting Cage's movements to a timeline of missing relics across Europe. Of the 5 items listed as likely smuggled or displaced from private collections in the past 2 years, 3 had links to cities Cage had visited: a lost Torah scroll in Salzburg, a gilded Ottoman astrolabe in Budapest, and a medieval reliquary in Lyon.
It was Leon that produced perhaps the most damning account.
A Romanian journalist named Alexandra Cristea published a story detailing a clandestine meeting she claims to have had with Cage at a bar beneath the Opera Nouvelle. She'd been investigating the black market artifact trade when a middleman offered to set up a meeting with someone who knows how the old things really move. According to Cristea, Cage appeared unaccompanied, dressed plainly but wearing gloves, despite it being summer. He never used her name and spoke in riddles, referring to artifacts as keys and anchors, claiming they were never meant to be hoarded in museums. At one point, he leaned forward and said, "The world thinks these things belong in glass boxes, but they are power objects. They carry memory, energy. They are not just old, they are alive." Cristea, stunned by the intensity of his language, asked what he meant by alive. Cage allegedly smiled and replied, "When you hold something that's seen centuries, your blood changes. It recognizes you, or it doesn't."
She asked if that was why he went to Istanbul. He stared at her for a long moment and said only, "That wasn't the first door. And it won't be the last."
Cristea published excerpts from the conversation, and the public response was immediate. Some said it proved Cage was losing his grip on reality. Others believed he was revealing a hidden truth in cryptic language. A few pointed to The Ninth Gate, a film where Cage's character similarly unravels while pursuing ancient forbidden texts. Was this life imitating art? Or vice versa? Meanwhile, his public appearances grew stranger. At a red carpet event in Venice promoting an independent film called The Whispering Table, Cage was asked directly about the Istanbul footage. He paused, blinked twice, then said, "Do you know what happens when you open something that was never meant to be closed? You don't just get history. You get echo. Sometimes the echo is louder than the origin." Reporters laughed nervously. The clip went viral. Online creators chopped it into parodies, memes, and conspiracy edits set to ominous music. Still, behind the spectacle, a pattern continued to solidify. Cage wasn't just traveling randomly. He was following a path, a deliberate route through Eastern Europe's densest corridors of lost relics and spiritual sites. A team of internet sleuths assembled a travel map from hotel logs, fan photos, customs records, and leaked airport manifests. The pattern revealed a spiral, originating in Jerusalem, arcing through the Balkans, and terminating in Istanbul. Several of the stops corresponded to known resting places of fragmented scrolls from the Book of the Covenant, an apocryphal text said to predate the Old Testament.
Was Cage searching for something? Or delivering something?
As rumors spread, Cage's team issued a statement trying to bring calm. Mr. Cage is a passionate historian and actor. He immerses himself in research for all roles and respects cultural heritage deeply. Any speculation about his involvement in international artifact trading is categorically false. But many noted what wasn't said. There was no denial that Cage had been in Istanbul.
No denial about the briefcase.
And just when it seemed the story had peaked, a bombshell dropped. One of Cage's European film projects, an experimental documentary titled The Collector's Code, was shut down mid-production due to permit violations. The reason? Several filming locations were active archaeological sites where local officials claimed artifacts had gone missing during the shoot. The implication was clear. Authorities had begun investigating Cage's work itself as a possible cover for artifact acquisition. Back online, Cage's fanbase was divided. Some insisted this was just his brand, chaotic, passionate, misunderstood.
Others began to worry. "He's not acting anymore," read one viral post.
"He's chasing something, and I don't think he'll stop."
One commenter put it more bluntly.
"Cage is in too deep.
He doesn't know if he's the character anymore."
And that's when things get dangerous. As pressure mounted, and investigators across Europe looked for answers, the question loomed larger than ever. If Cage wasn't just playing a role, what exactly had he become? The Istanbul briefcase scandal had already captured global fascination, but everything changed when intelligence agencies began to circle. The first indication came not through a formal announcement but a carefully leaked snippet from a podcast episode titled Dead Signals, hosted by former CIA analyst Gavin Tell. Known for his sharp deconstructions of geopolitical black ops, Tell's show was niche, until it wasn't. In a late May episode titled Cultural Currency and Celebrity Fronts, he dropped the bomb. "There are whispers in Langley," Tell said, voice steady, "that some very well-known American citizens may have been co-opted, willingly or otherwise, into moving high-value historical assets across hostile zones. These assets are old, controversial, and too radioactive for nation-states to touch directly. So, they get creative.
He never mentioned names. He didn't have to. Listeners instantly connected the dots.
Diddy and Cage weren't just eccentric collaborators, they were potentially human vectors in a covert operation involving ancient artifacts, intelligence laundering, and strategic cultural influence. Theories surged across social media platforms like a virus. And then, something even stranger happened. Gavin Tell's episode was taken down, not by the platform, but by Tell himself. "For legal reasons," he tweeted, "I've been advised to temporarily retract episode 68.
Please do not repost."
Yet within hours, mirrored copies appeared everywhere, gaining millions of plays. The international press followed. The Times of London published a front-page story titled "MI6 Quietly Monitoring Diddy Cage Access," citing a leaked intelligence cable dated just days after the Istanbul leak. The cable, allegedly sent from the British Embassy in Ankara to MI6's counter-illicit trade division, warned of ongoing cultural asset extractions potentially disguised through entertainment industry intermediaries. A redacted version of the cable surfaced shortly after.
It contained a short but chilling phrase.
"Object believed moved through Istanbul as part of non-state intelligence circuit. Cage and Combs designated as soft-lift operatives.
Risk level elevated.
Shadow support confirmed." The terms soft-lift operatives sent the internet into overdrive. Intelligence forums, military Reddit subs, and former spooks all weighed in. A soft-lift operative, some explained, was an unofficial actor, a civilian used by intelligence agencies to transport sensitive materials in plain sight. Their fame, their visibility, was their cover.
Who questions the briefcase of a global superstar?
But why Diddy?
Why Cage?
According to one former MI6 field officer, the appeal of celebrities lay in three things. Access, they travel globally, cross borders with ease, and are rarely subject to invasive searches. Plausibility, they are eccentric, unpredictable. If they act strange, no one assumes espionage. Obfuscation, if things go public, the scandal becomes a tabloid circus, burying the real story under layers of gossip and spectacle. Meanwhile, the U.S. government's silence grew conspicuous. Diddy and Cage were both American citizens, yet there was no comment from the State Department, no acknowledgement of ongoing investigations. When pressed, a White House spokesperson issued a carefully worded non-denial. "We are aware of the situation and continue to monitor developments related to international cultural preservation."
It said everything and nothing.
In contrast, Britain began tightening its circle. A member of Parliament, Ruth Havisham, used her floor time in the Commons to demand answers. Are our own intelligence services actively engaged in suppressing or manipulating information about foreign relics being trafficked with the help of British-based intermediaries? If Diddy or Mr. Cage were involved in an artifact smuggling operation, do we not owe the public full transparency? Her request for a formal inquiry was denied, but not before sparking a wave of independent investigations by European journalists. Back in Turkey, the story was shifting too. Sources within the National Intelligence Organization, MIT, told Al Jazeera that foreign surveillance had spiked dramatically in Istanbul since the briefcase leak. One official, speaking off the record, said, "We're not just looking at two celebrities. We're looking at a system, an invisible route connecting Dubai, Istanbul, Prague, New York, and Tel Aviv. The briefcase is just a vessel. What matters is who passed it, and to whom." This line took on deeper meaning when a former Mossad agent appeared anonymously on Israeli channel Keshet 12, claiming that the woman who handed Cage the briefcase in the Istanbul footage was not only Israeli, but a former intelligence courier with deep ties to non-declared cultural operations. "It's the oldest form of influence," the agent said. "Control what people remember.
Control the story.
Artifacts, scriptures, symbols, these are the true power objects.
And you don't move them through diplomats. You move them through actors. Through music icons.
They are the new couriers of empire." That same week, several online intelligence sleuths published declassified British National Archives documents showing historical precedent. During the Cold War, MI6 allegedly used classical musicians and theatre troupes to smuggle microfilm, coded documents, and even rare manuscripts into Eastern Bloc countries under the guise of artistic exchange. Were Cage and Diddy part of a modern-day revival of that method? Evidence continued to mount. In Germany, a museum employee leaked that a missing Ottoman battle map had been flagged by Interpol 3 days after Cage passed through Frankfurt Airport, where he declared film equipment valued at over $200,000. No inspection was done. Even more disturbing, Satellite footage provided to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism showed an unmarked Gulfstream jet leaving Ataturk Airport just 40 minutes after the briefcase exchange.
The plane's transponder was disabled.
But the tail number, when briefly captured by radar, matched a known CIA-affiliated logistics aircraft used during extraordinary renditions in the 2000s. Coincidence, or extraction? At this point, theories split into two camps. Camp 1, Cage and Diddy were part of a rogue operation, possibly recruited, possibly duped, moving artifacts for ideological reasons, profit, or legacy. Camp 2, the entire scandal was a sanctioned psyop. An intentional leak, crafted to distract from a much larger transfer of cultural capital or information hidden behind the spectacle.
One independent analyst on X posted a now viral thread.
What if the briefcase was never real? What if it was a decoy to draw eyes away from a second, quieter extraction in Istanbul that night? Who else entered or left the city while everyone focused on Diddy and Cage? This theory gained traction when airport logs revealed two unlisted VIPs flew out of Istanbul aboard diplomatic flights to Vatican City and Doha, both nations known to negotiate secret repatriation of cultural goods. Still, Cage and Diddy remained silent.
No legal action. No interviews.
Just silence. And silence, as many intelligence veterans will tell you, often speaks volumes. As MI6, the CIA, and MIT circle closer to the heart of the scandal, the lines between fact, fiction, operation, and performance grow ever thinner. Are Diddy and Cage accidental operatives, or were they always on the stage? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all. If governments are this involved, what, exactly, was in that briefcase? It began with a live stream, chaotic, unfiltered, and unmistakably desperate. At 2:13 a.m. Eastern Time, Diddy appeared live on his personal social media account, standing in what appeared to be a dimly lit home recording studio. Behind him, Platinum Records glinted faintly in the background. But gone was the confident mogul persona. His hoodie was half-zipped, his eyes wild with fatigue. He stared into the camera for a long 10 seconds before speaking. "They are setting me up," he said. "They want you to believe this story. They want to turn me into a villain for something I didn't do. But I'll say this once and for all, I was never in Istanbul."
The comments exploded.
Within minutes, over 300,000 viewers were watching. Diddy rambled on for nearly 8 minutes, veering between defiance and paranoia. He spoke vaguely about deep players, foreign agendas, and a system that makes monsters out of messengers. At one point, he held up his passport to the camera, flipping to a travel stamp page that, conveniently, didn't show any Turkish entry marks. But eagle-eyed viewers noticed something else, a small sticker on the passport cover, partially peeled off, displaying a Turkish customs barcode. A timestamp matched the date of the briefcase footage.
Screenshots circulated instantly.
The live stream abruptly ended after he shouted, "I was helping protect something important."
You think this is about rap music? The internet had seen celebrity meltdowns before, but this wasn't just a meltdown. It was a shift.
Diddy's performance added fuel to theories that had previously lived in whispers.
What was he protecting? Who was they? Was this confession or damage control?
The next day, Nicolas Cage broke his own silence. Unlike Diddy's chaotic rant, Cage issued a carefully worded official statement through his publicist. "I traveled throughout Europe for artistic research related to several film projects. I have always respected the integrity of cultural heritage and categorically deny any involvement in illicit trade or covert operations. The allegations surfacing online are speculative fiction."
But Cage's attempt at professionalism backfired.
Almost immediately, fans began circulating a behind-the-scenes clip from a red carpet Cage had attended just weeks earlier. In the video, when asked about the Istanbul story by a gossip reporter, Cage smirks cryptically and replies, "Some secrets belong in tombs. Others? They are just waiting to be made into movies." The line, eerily self-aware, was interpreted in two ways. Either Cage was mocking the situation, or he was once again blurring the line between performance and reality.
Either way, the damage was done.
The phrase "some secrets belong in tombs" trended worldwide, spawning memes, t-shirts, and even a limited-run NFT series portraying Cage as an artifact smuggling action hero.
But the fallout wasn't just digital.
That same week, a former assistant to Diddy, who had remained anonymous until now, came forward under the pseudonym Rachel M. Speaking to The Intercept, she claimed to have seen emails and travel documents indicating Diddy had known about the Istanbul exchange weeks in advance.
"He was talking about it like a mission," she said.
He called it the handover, said it had to happen on Turkish soil, or the deal would fall through. There were references to keeping the scholars quiet and paying for silence. It wasn't just some random meeting. She provided redacted screenshots to the publication, one email subject line reading, IST Transit, Secured Asset Control. Another message from someone labeled only as NC stated, the carrier is reliable. The exchange happens in the lobby. No unnecessary conversation. Legal representatives for both Cage and Diddy dismissed the claims as fabrications by a disgruntled former employee. But no formal defamation suit followed, further stoking public suspicion. Amidst the chaos, fan theories splintered into competing narratives. The Savior's theory: Diddy and Cage were secretly working with unnamed global protectors to preserve artifacts under threat of destruction. The live stream meltdown was a desperate warning. The Grifters' theory: they were exploiting their fame to profit from black market heritage trades, and the stress of exposure triggered the unraveling. The movie theory: the entire scandal was an elaborate viral marketing campaign for a hidden project, a film or documentary that blurred reality to generate buzz. The puppet theory: neither man was in control. They were being manipulated by unseen forces, state or corporate, used as tools in a larger cultural war. To further complicate things, a shadowy media company called ArcLight Projects, with no prior credits, released a teaser trailer for an unnamed film project on YouTube. The teaser showed Cage wandering the streets of Istanbul, hooded and alone, holding a briefcase identical to the one from the leaked footage. The words "Truth is never brief" appeared in white letters before the screen faded to black. Speculation erupted. Was this connected to the real event? Was this a metafictional art piece? Or was this the source of everything, the scandal manufactured to sell tickets? ArcLight Projects refused to comment. News outlets began drawing their own conclusions. CNN's Erin Morrison said it best during a panel discussion. "We're not dealing with a standard PR disaster or legal case here. We're dealing with the collapse of fact and fiction in real time. Diddy and Cage may have committed a cultural crime, or created the most immersive piece of performance art the world has ever seen." Meanwhile, the public's faith in official narratives continued to erode. Polls showed that over 62% of Americans believed there was more to the story than was being reported. In Europe, that number was even higher. In Turkey, the scandal had turned into political theater, with opposition leaders demanding accountability for the surveillance footage leak and suspected collusion within cultural ministries. As for Cage, he was last seen boarding a private boat off the coast of Croatia, surrounded by film crew members dressed in period clothing. Locals claimed he was filming something, but no production permits were ever filed. As for Diddy, his social accounts were wiped. His brand's website redirected to a single black screen with the words, "Silence is louder than truth." Some called it a confession. Others called it defiance. Either way, the world was watching, and no one could tell which direction the story would turn next. Because in the end, all the public had were stories. Some whispered, some shouted, and one, in particular, sealed inside a briefcase no one had seen opened. By now, the world had split into two realities. In one, Nicolas Cage and Diddy were rogue players in a shadowy global network smuggling cultural artifacts under the cover of fame. In the other, they were victims, or perhaps co-authors, of the most elaborate, reality-bending narrative ever constructed in the digital age. Both versions of the truth were absurd. Both had evidence. And both were missing the final piece: what was in the briefcase. Then, without fanfare, the closest thing to an answer emerged, not from a leak, not from an interview, but from a satellite image. Published by the independent watchdog group Orbital Inquiry, the image was a high-resolution still taken from a commercial satellite over Istanbul, captured just 90 minutes after the briefcase exchange. It showed the hotel's private tarmac, the same one where an unmarked Gulfstream jet had departed with its transponder disabled. A figure, heavily obscured but roughly the size and build of Diddy, was boarding the aircraft. More notably, the briefcase could be seen in his hand. But here was the kicker. The timestamp on the image contradicted Diddy's alibi by over 5 hours. It placed him on site in Istanbul after he claimed to be in Miami. Journalists and digital forensic teams swarmed the image, verifying its authenticity with astonishing speed. Experts confirmed its chain of custody, GPS metadata, and angle of shadow displacement. The evidence was irrefutable. Diddy had been in Istanbul. He had lied. And the briefcase had flown out with him. Diddy's legal team, silent since the meltdown livestream, issued no comment. But another wave of revelations was already forming. A former Turkish intelligence officer, speaking anonymously to Le Monde, revealed that the woman seen in the Istanbul footage, the one who handed Cage the briefcase, had been positively identified by MIT as Yoel Shahar, a known former Mossad logistics specialist. Shahar had operated during Israel's 1990s asset repatriation efforts and disappeared from public record in 2004.
This wasn't a handoff by an art dealer, the source said.
This was an extraction.
That revelation flipped the narrative once again. Was the briefcase not stolen, but reclaimed? And if so, from whom?
The Turkish government, under pressure from the international media and opposition parties, announced they had concluded their investigation. The final statement, released through a state press office, was carefully phrased. The matter involving unidentified foreign nationals, the Sran Palace Hotel, and the alleged transfer of cultural material has been reviewed.
We can confirm that no Turkish artifacts are currently unaccounted for.
As such, no further investigation is required.
This stunned observers.
A cultural scandal of this magnitude, and the file was being quietly closed?
Critics pointed out the statement's vagueness.
No Turkish artifacts are missing didn't confirm what the item was, only what it wasn't. It could have been Syrian, Egyptian, Israeli, or worse, a multinational relic belonging to no single country but fought over by several. Theories now entered a third phase, the cover-up era. Whistleblowers, now emboldened by the media frenzy, began to surface with competing claims. A low-level employee at the Vatican Apostolic Archive leaked a redacted manifest showing that an object of undecided provenance, spiritual classification, and international sensitivity had been logged into the vault 2 days after the Istanbul handoff. The object had arrived in a diplomatic pouch, accompanied by a single courier using a special Vatican exemption code not seen in over 30 years. Meanwhile, in the U.S., a brief but mysterious update appeared on the Department of State's Travel Security Advisory page under the Middle East tab. It warned of non-governmental efforts to retrieve legacy items tied to disputed cultural lineages and advised U.S. citizens to avoid public discussion or dissemination of unverified heritage transfers. The advisory vanished within 6 hours. And still, no word from Cage.
No interviews. No sightings.
His publicist claimed he was taking time to recalibrate. Then came the twist no one expected, a classified document leak, this time from inside Interpol. An internal report titled Operation Echo Archive listed a series of non-compliant cultural transactions investigated in 2024 to 2025. Entry number 17 included the Istanbul event, naming both Diddy and Cage explicitly.
The listed artifact?
Shem fragment, presumed origin, pre-Abrahamic Mesopotamia.
Scholars immediately jumped on the term.
If accurate, the Shem fragment referred to a long-lost scroll believed to predate known Hebrew texts, a mythical artifact thought to contain cosmological writings from an ancient priesthood that predated Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike. If such a scroll existed, its implications would be seismic. Not just religiously, but geopolitically. Ownership would spark claims from multiple faiths, and disputes could ripple across borders and belief systems. Theories turned dangerous. Influential figures across the Middle East began issuing cryptic statements, some praising the return of the memory, others warning that false custodians will not be spared. UN cultural envoys quietly postponed meetings. A rumor emerged that Diddy had been granted diplomatic immunity from an unnamed African nation shortly after the Istanbul trip. It all pointed to the same, terrifying conclusion. The scandal wasn't just real. It was being managed, contained, by governments, religions, and intelligence networks worldwide. And yet, in all this madness, one question remained unanswered.
Why them?
Why Diddy?
Why Cage?
That answer came not from officials, nor leakers, but from a final, untraceable post from the long-disappeared whistleblower AltaZero. The post read, "Because fiction travels faster than fact. And when you need to move something sacred, something old, something dangerous, you hide it inside a story no one will ever believe." With that, the account vanished for good. As of today, neither Cage nor Diddy has been charged.
No lawsuits have been filed. No artifacts officially declared recovered. But the world has changed. Museums now conduct silent audits. Cultural ministries rewrite their protocols.
And online, thousands still pore over every frame of the Istanbul footage, hoping, maybe foolishly, to find one more clue. The briefcase may be gone.
The truth buried. But the echo remains.
And maybe that's all it was ever meant to do, echo.